The third session for today will talk about what's wrong with the influencer brand engagement ecosystem currently and what can we do to nurture it. Joining this discussion today are Indu Sharma, Senior GM for Communications at Schneider Electric, Jumana Vadnagarwala, Chief Operating Officer at Kalolwala Associates, Radhika Nihalani, co-founder and CEO at Thinking Communications, Tina Masukhani Garg, founder and chief creative storyteller at Pink Lemonade, and Tushar Bajaj, managing director at Organic by MSL. Moderating this panel is Lovina Gujral, consultant at Candour Communications. Over to you now, Lovina, for this discussion.
Thank you for introducing the panel, Anubhuti. So influencer marketing is obviously not new, pegged to grow at a fairly mind-boggling pace. We've seen a recent industry report that has pegged the industry to reach a figure of about 2,200 crores by 2025, which is a fairly large, market size. Brands also we've seen have upped their marketing budgets to influencer engagement by as much as 25% in 2021 alone. But we've seen in the previous discussions also, it has come out of fairly clearly that the ecosystem is not without heartburn. Brands are struggling to see and to really find value in the fact that how some influencers with only a few thousand followers are commanding price tags that seem, for the lack of a better word, illogical. We are also marred by things like fake followers, fake engagement, bots, etc., and influencer engagement ecosystem. On the other hand, agencies are also struggling to justify the value that influencers are bringing to brands versus the ROI and the customer acquisition, lead generation that all these things are supposed to bring in for the brand. So there is a lot. While it's not a new phenomena, it's still in the throes of evolution. So our panel today is going to discuss some of the concerns that are faced in this area and how we can pave a roadmap or a way forward to improve this marketing initiative. So let's start with getting your thoughts in on the topic of our discussion today. So we'll start with you, Indu. What are your thoughts on what's wrong with the influencer engagement ecosystem and what do you think we can do to nurture it? Just very topical thoughts, then we'll go deeper as we proceed in the discussion. Over to you, Indu.
Thank you so much, Lovina, and thanks a lot for starting with me. Hi, all of my panelists, and hi to everybody who's listening to us. And I would say that I would like to start on a positive note because I've seen a lot of positive use of the influencer marketing as well. I would like to start with those few sentences that Seth Godwin actually spoke once, that marketing is no longer just about the products that you sell, it's more about the stories you tell. Now, how do you tell your stories? Your influencers are one of your storytellers, one of the most powerful platforms, like you, Lovina, just mentioned. I was looking at the stats, and one of the most prominent stats that we come across is influencers are, the people that somebody look up to. So researchers have indicated that 49% of the consumers depend on influencer recommendations. Now, that's huge. How I look at it is that influencers are creating an economy of trust, which is the core of the influencer engagement. And that is how I will look at it, and I would like to utilize it. And we have to look at how do we ensure that that trust is not breached. That should be the effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Indu. Over to you, Radhika. Would you like to come in with your initial thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So I would actually, I'm happy that Indu started on a positive note on this topic, and I do echo her thoughts. I do feel as well that influencers are playing a great role in bringing the brand story forward. And like we said that there are concerns for sure, and I think a lot of that also is because. The industry, they're still finding their bearings, and these kind of concerns do develop when any kind of new thing comes out in the market. So I think it's just about finding its bearing. So, which is why there are concerns even at the influencers end, as in they have their share of concerns as well, as do the brands. But I feel definitely it's more positive than negative. So, more things to rejoice than to be concerned about. So that's my those are my overall thoughts. I think they have become an integral spoke today in any kind of publicity or marketing campaign that anyone's putting together. And yeah, and then we'll deep dive as we go along.
Sure. Thank you. Tina, up to you.
I certainly am a believer in this, being in the industry that I am, and I think brands can't afford to ignore today. This is a separate channel, and like Indu said very rightly, another channel of storytelling, another medium of getting the word out on your brand, and especially if you are in the FMCG and fashion, luxury, lifestyle industries. It's working really, really well. But no doubt, I think one of the areas that plagues it is measurement and accountability, or ROI, that people are seeing. And I'd love to discuss more about that and what the possible solutions can be, because it impacts us and the brands. So happy to discuss that.
Tushar, your thoughts?
I think echoing what everyone's saying, it's definitely become an integral part of marketing mix and communications tactics that are deployed. Like any industry, it's maturing. It'll take time. It's very, very new. And one of the things that we feel is a strong gap is the fact that there is no standardization. And I think that will help in both the kind of ROI questions that are coming up and the fact that pricing is a little questionable every now and then. But it will also need to have a little leeway. It can't be the same as, say, digital advertising, because of the premiumness that an influencer may attach with their content, their community. And like Indu said, trust has a certain value which will also come into play within this ecosystem.
Thanks, Tushar. And Jumana, your thoughts before we move on to the next question?
Yeah, so as rightly said by all the other panelists as well, I think influencer marketing, it has done like a great job. I feel, the whole focus from the celebrity view has come down to an influencer view. It has become more localized now. Smaller players have started getting better chances, more chances than the celebrity. That culture has come down. But of course, like any other industry, this is not free of, not completely free of, improvements. There are a lot of improvement scopes, especially if I have to look at, the other marketing agencies or advertisements or corporate communication or PR agencies. This particular market is still not regularized. It has no standard. It is not a regularized market. So that is one thing which I feel, has a good scope of improvement on. Yeah.
Wonderful. So, what came out clearly from all your responses was that this is something that has many positive aspects to it, definitely. So, let's take that discussion a little further. If you can share with us some examples where you've seen, where the brand story has been told really well through an influencer engagement, or where there has been a really good return on investment, or something like that. With examples, if you could share, I'll start with you, Radhika.
Hi. So yeah, definitely. So like just reiterating, I think there are a lot of positives that have come out. I can tell you, as a PR person and also as a mom of two children, I feel like, if you see the whole segment of mom influencers and what they are doing today to brands, and especially brands that are homegrown, brands that do not have any marketing spends, who have really found their footing only on social media. So their entire outlet, and they're not even selling on any retailers, as in e-tailers like Amazon or anything. They're only selling through direct messaging on Instagram. So there is a whole community of influencers who have positively and massively kind of impacted the brand and the growth, in terms of visibility that they have got, and in terms of sales that they are getting today. But they've really put them on the map, and it's purely and purely through the influencers that they have reached out to. And also, a lot of influencers are also seeing, while of course a whole lot of that is paid, right, where a brand reaches out, but there are a lot of times that there are organic shout outs or organic validation that an influencer is giving towards certain brands. And that has turned out to be so helpful for brands itself, because they are just suddenly noticed and nobody knew of them till like yesterday, and now suddenly everyone's talking about them. In terms of giving an example, we had done a campaign with influencers, celebrity influencers. So my agency looks into entertainment in terms of brands, entertainment brands, and celebrities and films. Where we, for a show that we were promoting, we reached out to influencers to give them an award, which was which had the, what would you say, the essence of the show. We kind of captured that in an award. So the show was about strong, powerful women who are kind of breaking stereotypes. And we reached out to influencers, celebrity influencers, who kind of, where there's this similarity in terms of the essence of the show, and women who have kind of broken stereotypes. And we kind of gave them an award. So in terms of the ROI, it was so high because all I had to do is really give them an award, which costed my client couple of $1,000 to make, right? And then I gave it to like 10 people. But then I had a reach of over 50 million cumulatively, So I think what's important is what we need to understand is that who are we talking to? Is there really kind of like a brand resonance that is happening? I think once that kind of good marriage happens between the brand and the influencer that we're reaching out to, because it's not necessarily about the numbers that people have, which everyone already in their opening thoughts kind of mentioned that, that's kind of questionable because we don't know fake bots, etc., etc. Everyone knows that's kind of like a peril of the business today. But what's important is that once you find the right influencer match to the brand, I think that's when it becomes a win-win situation where we feel that the influencer is speaking the same, is, the personality of the influencer matches the personality of the brand. I think, and that's where as a PR person, as a publicist, our role come into play to find that good marriage. So it's a win-win for the influencer as well as the brand.
Absolutely. Very nicely put. Indu, yeah, Jamna, go ahead. You raised your hand.
Yeah, because while just taking away from the celebrity, mom celebrity, influencer, and being a mom myself, so definitely what Radhika has told, it has the brands which were not known yesterday, are suddenly everybody's talking about it. So definitely that way it has done a great job. But again, as an end user and being a mom myself, what I feel is that when a baby product or something like that is sold by an influencer, we don't know the authentication, how much how authentic it is. Like, for example, are the influencers equipped enough to standardize the products? Are they equipped enough to understand how much the testing the product has gone through before it has been advertised and before it has come out? And the mom influencers especially giving out health kits. So that is also one concern which, as an end user, I am always thinking whether it is the right thing to do or not, because influencers, they sway the buying decisions, they sway the brand image, like it has happened. So is it the right thing? Like, and the certification part, like the certification is something which is available with everybody anywhere, and any institute is ready to certify. But how much authentic are those certificates? As an end user, sometimes is what I always, in that, in that double mind.
Sure. Appreciate your points. But as we were talking about the fact that this is definitely a positive ingredient for a marketer mix to have, is there any example on that part that you wanted to share? Before we move on to the next.
Share an example. I'd like to
Sure.
share an example. We work with a brand called Deep Rooted in Bangalore, and they are sellers of fruits and vegetables, just like Gourmet Garden and Frazo and the others, right? Some of you may be aware of these. So they wanted to go ahead with the influencer marketing campaign, and we chose Ayush Shraddha, who's very well known as an RJ, but also a great influencer, and his style is very comedy and nicely done. But Shraddha also comes across very nicely as a woman, as a homemaker, and she does many different personas and things like that. So I think there was great brand congruence between both of them. In fact, the results were so good because of her. Then we did a series of 3 different, reels with her. The brand actually picked up one of the reels and is using it for their performance marketing today, because the results coming out when your brand congruence is so high with somebody who's trying to sell in her original content format, and we didn't ask her to tailor her content format too much, so it was hit the nail right on the head, and it was a great example. Worked really well for both the brand and the influencer. So that was a great positive example I want to share.
Right. I think that's also a great example of matching the right influencer with the right brand requirement. Indu, since you represent the brand Schneider, any examples from your end to share? And are you using them for your B2B part of the business also? If you would like to add that input.
Sure. As a marketer, I would say that there are 3 broad things that have always touched me for the influencer management. 2 of them, Radhika and Tina, touched upon. One was obviously a personalized narrative. How each of the stories that comes out is very, very unique, like Tina mentioned. Similarly, there is a lot of visibility for the brand that gets created. A lot of time it leads to the trials, but broadly it happens somewhere in the B2C segment. So B2B actually makes use of the third part of it, which I would touch upon, is creating the social proof for the brand or for the message that you're trying to put out. In fact, in my previous role as well, I had used it, and now here as well, which is for a sustainability initiative that we did recently. And obviously, sustainability is not as fancy and as sexy as a Durex or a Wheat, or for that matter, or any of the brands that I've worked with in the past. Now, this was for the launch of this, and the effort was primarily upon finding the right kind of voices, and we got only organic people to come on board. There was no payment made to even single influencer, because it was about the power of the idea and the belief in what we are doing. But the kind of course that come out, is inspiring for many more such people, not just on social but even in the corporates, because there is a kind of shared value which gets created. There's a virality to the message that it gets put out. So it's not, see, I would say that no story is B2B and B2C. It's about how you put the message out. It's just about how you put it out, who you use to put it out, and if you have the right kind of effort, right people identified, it will go out. That has been my experience.
That's great, and that's absolutely, I think, the top end that we can all wish to or aspire to achieve, where you have influencers coming in just because they believe in the cause so much, and then they're supporting your engagement. Tushar, over to you. Any cases
I think
to share?
I think the most memorable one was, in fact, to do with COVID best practices and COVID appropriate behaviors and awareness around that. And we had the privilege actually to work with people across the board: lifestyle influencers, food influencers, tech influencers, and everyone came on board. Some were paid engagement, some were special access, some wanted to do it voluntarily. And the uniqueness with which each of them gave the same message, but in their own different styles, the kind of reach, both the depth and the breadth of the reach that we were able to achieve with something using influencers, that would not have been possible with any other tactic. So I think that would be the most memorable experience, and probably one of the cases where a lot of different types of influencers were used for exactly the same message. And it can happen with social causes. Doesn't necessarily apply to brands, but that's one that I would like to share.
Great. So there are obviously heartwarming stories and authentic brand relevance stories related to the influencer engagement ecosystem. But now let's focus the discussion on the concerns that exist in these engagements. So I'd like all of you to just talk about 2 or 3 concerns and the reason why you think these concerns exist. So, Jumana, would you like to go first? And also, if you can again back it up with an example or 2, where things really did not go as planned or as expected, so the learning just becomes that much more important with an example.
Yes. The first thing, what I find with the influencer ecosystem is that somebody who's a great influencer in their own field, uh, say a fitness field, or you know, they might not be very great content creators. They might be, they might influence based on their work and the kind of their content. So if a stakeholder, if a company is approaching an influencer to market their product or to for a brand engagement. Uh, they also need to partner with them for creating the right content also. Because, for example, if we approach Sachin Tendulkar for something, he is great at what he does. But if he wants to have a brand engagement, he will not be enough to have that kind of a content. He will need somebody else onboarded with him to create that kind of content. So this is one thing with the influencers is is what I feel. The second one, obviously, I touched in the first the question before this, is the authenticity. Like the certifications and all that is so widely available everywhere that everybody wants to certify their product or the service with something, and they say that it is certified. So the authenticity of that, whether the influencer himself or herself, especially the micro and the mid-level influencers, if are they equipped enough to understand and test the product before they are talking about it. So these are the two problems which I feel is we can actually think about it.
Right. Radhika, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think one concern that I'd like to highlight is that somewhere we are seeing, especially in entertainment, that there's lack of consistency in terms of content. So what's happening is that a lot of entertainment influencers, because everyone's seen like this big boom, and everyone's seen going from a couple of thousands to now million plus followers. And the minute you're hitting like certain benchmark in terms of followers, then lots of brands are of course kind of struggling to get on your page. What's happening there is that then there is no consistency of content. So just to give an example is that one big media entertainment influencer is Viral Bayani. Sure you guys know of him. Now he's an entertainment influencer. That's your claim to fame, and that's how you become popular, and that's why people are following you. But now that you become that popular, that you are putting astrology articles on your page, you are putting builder ka room acha hai, that also on your page. So what's happening is that then an entertainment brand is not confident to go out to this influencer anymore, because we don't know who's the follower. Like, is the follower who's looking to buy a good house? Is the follower a person who wants to consume entertainment news, or is a person who wants to know through astrology what's going to happen to his life tomorrow? So I think what's happening, to me, a concern is that there is lack of consistency that's starting to happen across some influencers, where they're diluting themselves too thin, because this sudden spurt of popularity that's come their way, and demand that's come their way. So they are not able to then contain their audience or keep them focused. So yeah, I think that's a concern that one needs to deal with.
And why do you think this happens? Is it because, I mean, could it just be the financial motivation of things that they're
100%.
willing to?
100%, because it's so new, right? Because I'm just saying
Right.
that, especially in terms of entertainment influencers, the paparazzi, as we are really calling them today. 5 years ago, there were people who were invited to cover red carpets. Right? There was no Instagram, there was no Facebook, there was no following. They were not coming
Right.
on coffee with Karan as celebrities. So it's just this newfound celebrity, mini celebrity status that people have got, that they and it can get, I would assume, tough to kind of handle it. So I think a financial aspect has to be a great motivation. Lack of understanding of keeping your audience focused, because these are not people who have really studied anything. They have just become influencers. Of course, COVID has also really helped, like given them a huge burst in the last 2 years. So I think there's a lack of knowledge. There's a financial aspect. It's a mix of all. But what's happening is that the brands are now questioning that while they are great with great following and pretty much on every entertainment marketer's list, but now there are questions that are starting to arise: is that are they really the right people to engage with? or not, because there's all sorts of content that now you're seeing on their page as opposed to what we saw possibly just a year ago.
Tushar, your concerns?
So I have 2 points, and one fairly similar to what Radhika was highlighting. I think the maturity to pick the brands, and this is from a influencer standpoint, and to keep their audience first and their community first in their minds, is actually we're far from that. I don't think that's been achieved yet, and that will become increasingly important even for brands, because they want that association to sort of come in, and that association is what will help push their brand further. It's not just the reach. And the second part, which is connected, is that I think brands also need to get clearer about where in their funnel uh, influencers lie. So I think certain industries, consumer tech, for example, far more mature about it. They know that it's far deeper into their funnel. They're in the consideration or the preference sort of stages when the influencers become important. And accordingly, that sort of changes the pricing, but also makes the metrics far clearer. If brands are not clear about whether they're going for engagement or reach, then selection's a problem, results is a problem, measurability anyway is a problem, because the influencer is the only one that has access to the data. So all of this starts to get resolved as there is more clarity on where you want to use influencers.
Right. Tina, your thoughts?
Yeah, I have a couple of points as well. And the one that I want to say, most importantly, I think the brands also need to give the influencers a little leeway in the fact that they know their audience, they know why someone comes to them. But as brands, I find that brands come and say, "Ye bhi lagao, wo bhi lagao," ye put this USP inside it, and sometimes the storytelling doesn't call for that USP. In many cases, I've seen the influencer who has succeeded in going viral on a particular kind of a campaign has done their own style of storytelling, which is valid for those audiences that enjoy it, and the brand has only gained from that aspect. The second problem that I'd like to talk about is, like I mentioned earlier, is the measurement aspect of it, because very few influencers even go to the analytics page and try to see how many successes or how many people actually viewed it. And in a bid to get more people to view and more followers, there's very little housekeeping done by them to see that, did I get right followers, fake followers, who's engaging, and who are these people who are coming in. Because right now there are 95 million fake accounts on Instagram. And I think influencers have to work harder to be able to weed out the not so, or the bots, or the not so impactful followers. That's another one that I think is a definite must. The third thing, like I said, and I mean, like I said earlier about the brand congruence. I mean, how many times have we heard Akshay Kumar speak against, tobacco and things like that? But still, he's ready to put his name on the Zarda, and because of the money element that is coming in, of course, his quotient is much higher than an influencer. He becomes a celebrity itself. But I think influencers should also be careful about something like this. The fourth point I'd like to mention is overexposure. Some of the influencers, especially in the lifestyle space, have overexposed themselves. I mean, you see them on a holiday every second day. So what are they actually attesting to? One holiday is as good as the other. There has to be a little demarcation in what they choose.
Right. Indu, your thoughts?
While I think most of it is already covered by my friends here, I would just say that if in one sentence I have to say, I would rather say that, unlike the popular belief, more is messier when it comes to influencer. Because more number of influencers make it tough for us to find out. More kind of measurement from CPM to CPC to CPV to, the engagement. Nobody's really knows where to put the money and how to really figure it out. The demand for more is again the last problem maker, because as a brand I'm not happy to get only 10 voices. I want 100 voices. So somewhere the quality of the entire engagement goes down. So we have to tone this more down and bring it to the realistic numbers, and only then we will be having any kind of visibility out of what we are trying to do with this whole influencer engagement.
So, from what we've heard so far, it appears that not only are the influencers diluting their own brands or opening themselves up too much, it's also the brands who are willing to allow the influencers to do this kind of opening up, right? So, otherwise, why would, like Radhika mentioned, why would a real estate person go to a Viral Bhayani or an astrology person go to a Viral Bhayani, for example? So if we were to take the whole ecosystem and, the important players being the influencers, the brands and the agencies, what is it that we expect from each of these stakeholders? One or two things that you would like to see change from each of these perspectives, these three stakeholders' point of view, to improve things as they were. Tushar, I'll go to you first with this question.
I think and one of the stakeholders that I'd like to sort of bring in here are the platforms themselves. I think there is a role that they have to play in educating all of the creators. I think there's a lot of competition in bringing creators onto specific platforms, keeping them exclusive. And that, of course, in turn is pitched as a business, something that they can monetize. But that level of education doesn't come in. So I'd like to see the platforms put in more time, effort in educating the creators on their respective platforms. It's not like it doesn't happen, but I think there's a need for a lot more, especially with newer platforms coming in. And from brands and influencers in particular, I think there is a lack of maturity that really needs to come in, both in terms of they need to start thinking about it as a business, and they need to have the infrastructure in place to deal with brands, to deal with frequent requests. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that is faced, especially when you're looking at micro influencers or nano influencers even. So those are things that I'd like to definitely see some changes coming in. From a regulator point of view, however, I think given the qualitative nature, I don't think too much regulation is going to be helpful in this space. Disclosure, I think, is one that should be implemented. But apart from that, it should be a little more open in the way that these transactions take place between brands and influencers.
Right. Tina, would you like to come in with your thoughts?
I certainly think agencies should step up the amount of due diligence that we do in terms of the following that an influencer has, and how is this being built up. And any agency worth their salt will definitely be able to tell you where an influencer suddenly spikes in followership and things, and what is the kind of content that goes well with the brand. I think that's one thing agencies can be fair and open about. Influencers on their end, well, there is a problem of plenty today for many brands coming to the same influencers. So I do feel that their offering should be pretty well packaged or thought through, because in the light of the fact that you're not giving us, ROIs of any sort, and we are likely to take that and magnify it ourselves, amplify it ourselves, I think there should be a little limit on some kind of cost, because some of the influencers I've approached, costs are exorbitant, and brands are not going to spend that kind of money for a platform that is, or a channel that is yet nascent in its reporting and things like that. In terms of brands, I think I touched upon it the last time. I definitely feel brands should give more freedom to the influencers to create the kind of content that works, because everybody comes with the tag of viral karna hai, when they work with influencers. Some openness there.
Jumana?
Yes, as Tushar also rightly pointed out, I think the here the key is not about the number of followers, or the number of people who subscribe to your this thing. I think the quality of the database is more important. And also, when it comes to the mid level and the micro influencers, they do not have as many resources at their disposal as much as a macro level or a celebrity influencer has. It could be financial resources, it could be legal resources, and otherwise. So the stakeholder, something consciously what they can do is give more resources, financial, legal, etc., for the influencer to be more confident if they want to engage with their brand or with their product. So this is something which I think is important.
Indu?
I would say that we have currently been using influencer marketing at a very base level, you know, and it's time that the whole ecosystem evolves and there are new things that are done. There is experimentation that happens, and it can only happen if both sides of the equation do try to work towards it. How about using, an influencer for listening rather than speaking? You know, Why can't they be your eyes and ears on ground? Why they just have to tell your stories alone? Because there's a huge part of engagement that actually happens through the influencers. So that's an unexplored arena that we do. And there are a few others here, why not have ambassadors created out of this? I mean, I remember seeing one of the beauty brands using them as a face for their advertising campaigns as well. Why not have that kind of an experimentation? Why don't have we have social commerce opportunities, right? All of these influencers have their own platforms. So instead of just going by numbers, likes, views, if we as brands are not asking for more, we are also not pushing them to come back with a little more realistic and meaningful, solutions. Somewhere this whole love for numbers and more has to die. And if last I have to really say something, I would say that, I currently belong to the technology B2B domain, and there is just so much which is happening in technology. It's ruling our lives in all ways, from artificial intelligence to machine learning. There is a metaverse that we are all knowing today. What is it that we can do with influencers through all of this? That would be the love of this art, I would say. That is what we should, look forward to in the time to come, instead of just battling with this whole thing of, if I'm putting a campaign, should there be 100 people? Should they be further reaching 1,000 people? And how many of them are positive and negative? Let's twist the conversation and look at it differently.
Great. I'm glad you brought that up, because as we are nearing the end of our session, my last question to all of you would be around the fact that, in the future, how do you see the influencer engagement ecosystem playing out? Whether you want to, list down some expectations, or you want to talk about some trends that you think are going to play out, or something that you would want, for the industry as a thought that you want to leave with all of us. Radhika, I'll start with you. If you would like to just sort of talk about and
Sure.
a more mature ecosystem to be developed.
Just, I think, couple of things. I think from the brand side, two things, and I think Tina pointed it out. It's a point that I had made as well. I thought I'll say that, but and I fully agree that brands have to give creative freedom to the influencers, because see, they have built a community. You are going after them because they have a certain sense of following. There is their personality that they bring to their social media pages. You have to let them thrive in that personality. When you give one, it's not one size kind of fit all approach that, okay, I'm going to use 10 influencers, this is my script, and I need all of you to do a rendition of that script. It's not going to work. So I think from brands side, they have to give the creative freedom. And secondly, I think brands need to build a stronger community, with the influencers. I'll get one influencer to do one post for me, and I hope with that I get an ROI and I get sales and I get customers. It's not going to happen. Also because influencers are engaging with so many brands. So I just think that identification that brands need to do, and how do you build a stronger connect with the influencer that you are engaging with. And just to take a quick example, so Riya Kapoor is a fashion, in that sense, influencer. She's a producer, but now her whole personality is fashion, and she's styled her sister, put international designers on the Indian fashion scene. But here she started creating and curating content which was on her social media pages, which was food, which was not something that anyone expected. And there comes in an ice cream brand and collaborates with her. So suddenly everyone's wowed that, oh my God, I want to buy this ice cream, because now I have seen this girl create food content which looks amazing. None of us have, of course, tasted that food, but it looks amazing. We hear people talk about it. So it's not that the brand came first. The content and her association with that field, which was very different from a field that she typically is associated with, a different field, and then a brand comes in. So I'm saying that a stronger connect needs to happen. And I feel in terms of influencers, they definitely, as Tushar also rightly pointed out, they need to put their community first. It's not about having, making a quick buck today. It's about the long-term brand value that they are creating for themselves, because then they can really negotiate and ask for a price, because there is no regulation. So, they can really ask for whatever, but they need to put their community first, and build their own brands. I think that's important. And I think from PR, as in what we all need to do is, like everyone's mentioned multiple times over, like due diligence. Are we really reaching out to the right people? The influencers, the universe of influencers that we are operating in, what is their reach? What is their engagement? I think that's what's important. Engagement has to be above reach, because it's not just the numbers, it's the conversion, it's the kind of engagement, the conversations that influencer is able to kind of pull in when they're engaging with your brand. I think that's important. So that's my 2 bit on it.
Any thoughts on what you would like to see happen in the industry, say 1 or 2 years down the line? The shape of the industry to appear about a couple of years down
I
the
would
line.
definitely, really, at a very personal level, want more intelligent integration with influencers. Now this suddenly you see a lifestyle influencer is selling Harpic in such an obvious way that it is rather annoying as an end consumer. And we have actually had this kind of in your face marketing for very long, and the West does it very well. I was just talking to my team the other day, and so many years ago when Friends came, I'm a huge fan of that show, and there is a line where Joey says stupid gap on every corner. It's a gap integration, but it's just done so phenomenally. It's not saying, oh, gap and nice cotton and good shirt and see how nice I'm looking. I just feel like more intelligent collaborations need to happen in terms of how the script or the content is created. More intelligent. I hope to see more intelligent content coming out.
Wonderful. Jumana, your thoughts on what the future should look like ideally?
I feel going forward, I would like to see a lot of collaboration, with the influencer community within themselves also. Just rather than being a one man or a one woman army, I would like to see if there are, a couple of more collaborations with the influencers, and then some kind of brand engagement happens. So this is what I would want to see going forward.
Great, Tina.
So I definitely want to say this. I think the influencer ecosystem is going to change like mad, because what is working better than influencer marketing today is user generated content, and it's giving brands a lot more return for their money in terms of reach and visibility and follower base. And I think the US is already onto it. There are lots of UGC studios that are creating realistic content for people. So these influencers may be micro nano influencers, but their content is working wonders. We've just created a studio like that ourselves, and I think that is the content that people are really after. It converts 92 times more when you have someone realistically telling you, looks like you, speaks just like you, and is giving you word of mouth marketing. That's converting much better. So I do feel that's the future of using influencers. Thank you.
Great. Tushar, your comments?
I think I would just like to see more loyalty with brands. I think that's going to be key. And it may lead to situations where you have certain influencers going up against other influencers, all respectively loyal to their brands. But that's more reflective of the real world. And I think that will have better uptake with their respective audiences as well.
Great. Indu, your thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, well, I did say a few of them in my previous response, but if it's but one sentence, I would say that influencer management is certainly not surrogate advertising. Try using it for creating experiences, and that's how you will differentiate yourself and your brand. Otherwise, it will always be Me Too campaigns running across different brands. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for your input. So we leave you with some very, hopeful thought, shall I say. Influencers, stay true to your community. Don't dilute your brand. Brands give more leverage, more power to your influencers who you decide to go with. Let them do their thing. There will be value to be gained in the long run. So over to you, Anubhuti. Thank you all panelists for joining us this afternoon. It was a wonderful discussion.
Thank you, Lovina, for
Thank
that
you,
wonderful
Lovina.
session. Thank you to all our panelists, Tina, Indu, Tushar, Jumana, and Radhika.